This week, you could say that the truth is revealed with the full moon in Gemini, but only if you're on a need to know basis. This full moon in Gemini that we're having this week is highlighted by Mercury in Scorpio. So while there is some truth and some secrets being revealed, not everyone's going to know. Not everyone needs to know. It's a very interesting week in the astrology. As well, some of the other highlights that we're going to be having is Venus making a sextile to Pluto, now with Venus in Sagittarius. So the energy is a lot better just with that. But Mercury, now that it's direct, is going to make a trine to both Jupiter and Saturn. So we get to kind of come back to a little bit of the themes of the Mercury retrograde, but in a much better place this time. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump straight into the horoscope. Welcome back to the astrology report, this time for December 1st through December 7th of 2025. We are almost at 2026. Time, what is it? It's just like 2025 started feeling long in September, and then all of a sudden it's like the new year. So it's really weird. Anyway, I'm going through that. My job is to tell you what's going on in the astrology and to help you guys figure out what you're doing with your life. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's just go ahead and get started talking about it. So like I said last week, if you're interested in what we're using for the chart for the video, this is my new app, Startek. We're going to be launching it in January of next year, so about a month away. And we're going to start talking a lot more about it this week on the full moon in Gemini, giving us a nice little lunar cycle, because we're going to launch it on the full moon in Cancer. It's like the fucking full moon in Cancer at the beginning of 2026 is awesome. Anyway, we're going to start talking about it over on Instagram. Like I said, if you're interested in this, sign up to our newsletter. The link to that will be below, startek.world. And I want to talk about it more without spoiling a lot of secrets. One of the reasons we chose startek.world and not .com was, number one, startek.com is taken, but number two, we're really building a world. It's not just an astrology app. We're building a universe. And like I said, this app is going to change the online astrology space forever. And I mean that when I say that. And I think when you guys get access to the app, you will understand exactly what I'm saying. I'm really excited about it. But anyway, if you're interested in a better astrology app and you want to get some more information, go ahead and sign up to the newsletter below. We will be sending out a special little treat for the people that sign up for that. And yeah, make sure you follow us over on Instagram at Startek app. And we'll be talking a lot more about it as the weeks go on too. So we start Monday off with the moon in Aries, and it's going to be making a trine to Mars in Sagittarius, and then it's going to make a square to Jupiter in Cancer. Then later on in the evening, the moon will ingress into Taurus and make a square to Pluto. So I like the moon in Aries trining Mars in Sagittarius. Lots of fun energy. Now that Venus is in Sag, Mars is in Sag. I think I ended this last week with everything in Sagittarius and Mercury in Scorpio. I like that combination because Sagittarius is kind of like the bow hunter, right? It is really a hunting sign. And Mercury in Scorpio allows more for a mental focus on something specific. And Mars in Sag is like on an aim, on a point B, on a target, whatever it is. So I don't mind Mercury in Scorpio with all the Sagittarius stuff. In fact, I think it would enhance it a lot better. So I'm really excited for this week. With the moon in Aries making that trine to Mars in Sagittarius, there's this really aggressive energy, but really fulfilling, really putting like your all into something, getting your hands really dirty. It's very aggressive and primal energy, so lean into that, have fun with it. But as the moon makes that square to Jupiter, it's not for the faint of heart. Why I say that is, with the moon in Aries making a square to Jupiter in Cancer, there's a little bit of having to say things in a way that not everybody's going to like to digest. Something that I think is unfortunate about society that I could use much more vulgar terms for is that people's sensitivity and their lack of understanding what empathy means. Many people think empathy is taking care of someone versus empathy might be taking away any sort of care for them to figure it out on their own so they can build themselves up on their own. And what I mean by that is when the moon trining Mars and then squaring Jupiter in Cancer, there's a level of like, hey, this isn't time for pussyfooting. You know, not everything that you say and not everything that you do can be packaged up and wrapped in a way that people can all digest in a happy way. Oftentimes, truth is a little harsh, but it's the truth and it's the reality. And with the moon in Aries leaving a trine to Mars in Sagittarius, squaring Jupiter in Cancer, it might be a little vulgar. It's not for the faint of heart, but there is a level of having to work with being able to be emotionally like putting yourself into something and understanding that not everyone can handle that energy. Like I'm a lot of energy and I've learned to like, I can't always just like, put all my energy, like, especially here. You guys have no idea. I always love people because I've learned this from being a YouTuber. But when you do social media, people think that they know you. You guys don't know me. Like you know my weekly horoscopes. You have no idea who the fuck I am. And I keep it very cool and calm and reserved most of the time on my weekly horoscopes. So I say that because not that I love you guys and I appreciate you guys being here. It's more so of the moon in Aries squaring Jupiter and Cancer. Sometimes you have to be aggressive and you have to sometimes wrap it up in a way that people can digest. But there is a little bit of like, hey, it's not for the faint of heart. You're going to have to kind of like deal with some vulgar energy. But then the moon goes into Taurus and it squares Pluto. The thing I wrote down is the moon in Taurus is you want to chill as much as you can. As it squares Pluto, there might be this kind of lack of being able to chill, kind of a fear around something. You want to go out, you want to relax, but you're afraid of socializing for whatever reason because the internet's all fucked us up around social and human interaction. So that might be a thing. We get to Tuesday. The moon is still hanging out in Taurus. It's not doing anything, but we get our first highlight of the week, and that is Venus sextiling Pluto. Venus is now in Sag, and this is last week I was talking about watching Attack on Titan again, and it was really this. It was this Venus sextiling Pluto thing where the thing I wrote down was power outside of the walls. When like Pluto and Aquarius, it's one of those things where like, look, the whole technology and the AI infrastructure, the digital ID, the social control, the digital panopticon, that's what that is. Okay. And there's a level, and it doesn't really matter, you know, what's going on in politics or what's going on in the world. Like that's what's going on. And with Venus sextiling Pluto, there's a level of, it almost reminds me of like hacker groups or something like that. Like people that are outside of that infrastructure that, you know, try to escape that. The other thing I wrote, the reason I wrote down power outside of the walls though, is that what are these walls that you set up for yourself? Especially with ideas or how things have to be. And I like Venus making a sextile to Pluto because there's this level of fun and enjoyment and just excitement for not having to be defined by those labels, not having to be defined by the structure that you're in. Something that's been really helpful for me lately is just not caring about a lot of stuff. And that sounds maybe cold, but it's one of those things of this world wants you to care about everything, but not about your actual personal life. And I find that really challenging given how things are presented to people. I find it challenging to not care about things, but there's so much freedom in not having to live in it's kind of like one of those things of I've been watching, you know, Attack on Titan. I've been seeing commercials. And I'm looking at these commercials. I'm like, oh my God, people still buy off these commercials. Although I will say there was this commercial of this woman washing bedding in, I don't know, some detergent. And she was like sexually like rubbing all of the sheets on her face. And I was like, that actually sounds nice. I want that vibe. Like I want to be in a dream world where I'm just like sexually rubbing myself on my bed because it feels so good and it smells so nice. But I say that because Venus and Sag, like sextiling Pluto, is like there's a level of like you don't have to like contain yourself. Venus and Sag is primal. Mars and Sag is primal. Be wild, you know. Don't be afraid to like bend like social rules or get out of the paradigm in which you set yourself up of like this is how I operate. This is how people operate. This is how I do things. Like you don't have to play by anyone's rules. In fact, no one's playing by the rules at all if you've fucking checked lately. So why do you play? What are the rules that you set up and why do you play by those rules? Like generally, like, and this is something that I like to think a lot about too, is there's certain ways that I want to do things, right? And I convince myself I'm right and all that other stuff. And every now and then I try to stop myself and go, why does it have to be this way for me? And like, what is a completely opposite, different way I could look at it? And that like little test helps me really see other options. So anyway, Venus sextiling Pluto, there's a lot of power and in energy and being primal, being wild, being unable to be controlled. Be wild. And that theme's going to keep coming up during this week. So on Wednesday, while the moon, we get to Wednesday and the moon's going to be in Taurus, it's going to go opposite Mercury and Scorpio. Then the moon is going to sextile Jupiter and Saturn. Then the moon will conjoin Uranus and sextile Neptune. And then the moon goes into Gemini and trines Pluto. A lot of lunar stuff happening on Wednesday. I think Wednesday is more so when the week really begins. The moon's going to go opposite Mercury. You got to keep it cool, even if you know someone's secrets. While the moon is in Taurus, there's a level of keeping it chill, keeping it calm, and keeping it collected. But it's going to go opposite Mercury and Scorpio, where someone might want to say something to you that really tries to dig deep down. But we don't play that. You don't react. You respond, but you don't react. And I think while the moon is opposite Mercury, there's going to be a opportunity for you to react to information, to things being said or thoughts being had that kind of triggers like somewhat of a spiral thing. And you have to know when to keep cool around a lot of this stuff. I think after now that Mercury's not retrograde and all that other shit, I think it's gonna be easier to be a little bit fixated. But there will be this kind of challenge between the moon in Taurus wanting to relax and Mercury in Scorpio still being like, digging a hole and being really fixated on emotional dark stuff. So that comes up. But then the moon makes a sextile to Jupiter and Saturn. And it's like, all right, moon opposite Mercury, a little bit of a confrontation of something that might want to trigger you. You should keep chill. But then the moon makes a sextile to Jupiter and Saturn. And it's like, you have to kind of allow peace to come overcome you. Like Jupiter and Saturn is like, all right, what's the bigger picture here? How can it be a little bit more disciplined? The moon makes a sextile to both of those. I think that'll be very easy to do after that. The moon will then conjoin Uranus and sextile Neptune, or sextile Neptune conjoin Uranus. I forgot which one is which. The moon conjoining Uranus is going to be some sudden instability, some sudden shock of something. That doesn't have to be like everything in your life going wrong, but it does have to do a little bit more with feeling a sense of tension being released. And I think as that tension kind of gets released and the moon makes that sextile to Neptune, like I've been saying, like allow yourself to be visual, allow yourself to really like create an inner world and visualize that and bring that feeling to you. And I think as the moon conjoins Uranus and there's this like, tension that just kind of gets unlocked all of a sudden, I think it allows you to have a little bit more creative freedom with things. But then the moon goes into Gemini. And now we begin the full moon phase, but as the moon goes into Gemini, it trines Pluto. There's it's like a sugar high. There's like this information and this curiosity and this stimulation that is going to kind of overcome you on Wednesday. So there's a lot kind of going on Wednesday just with the moon in general. But that brings us to Thursday, where on Thursday, the moon is then going to go opposite Venus. And by later in the day, we're going to have the full moon in Gemini. So the moon in Gemini opposite Venus in Sag, a lot of this is rumors. Like I would consider this week rumor filled. You're on a need to know basis. So truth is revealed somewhere. And the thing I wrote down was information goes against the dream and you should go anyway. So oppositions are challenges. They're like coaches, essentially. They're not necessarily bad. I think squares are a lot worse than oppositions, to be honest with you. But the moon in Gemini is typically reflective of learning about information. The moon's job is to light up the night and to light up the dark, what we don't always get to see. This is Gemini. So this is information, right? Just rumors, communication. It is ruled by Mercury in Scorpio. Mercury in Scorpio is secrets and dark stuff. So there's something that's going to be revealed. That's more of the full moon. But as the moon goes opposite Venus, there's a level of, for example, Venus and Sag, let's say you're going to move away from your hometown. You're going to move to New York City. You're like 18, 19, and you're like, I'm just going to run away. And the moon in Gemini is like, well, what about this? And well, what about that? I heard this is bad over here. I heard it's hard to do that kind of stuff. And it's going to make you feel some tension around what you're doing. And I look at the moon going opposite Venus as like, you can't let what people say stop you from your journey and where you're going. Like only you know that. And I think it's going to be easy to kind of like be a little bit triggered about something because Venus and Sag like wants to go, but the moon in Gemini is like, well, what about this? And what about that? And all of that. And you kind of just have to not listen to it. But I think another part of it though, is what is nice is the moon in Gemini, like we like the moon contacting Venus anytime that we can get it. And so there is this information that might make you think a little bit deeper about what you're doing. Venus is pleasure, fun, connection. She's in Sagittarius. So this is a lot about going for the thing, being wild, not saying no, saying yes to most things, being adventurous. And that moon in Gemini might be a situation that makes you ask more questions to get clarity on maybe what your why is. Or for example, someone might be like, oh, you're moving to New York? Like, well, what about this? What about that? And someone else might be like, oh, you're moving to New York? I know this person. You can get connected with them. I know this little area. You should do this. You would be really good here. Like there's just a lot of information that's going to kind of like really be directed at the fun, exciting thing that you're kind of moving towards, which is fine. But then we get the full moon in Gemini. This is later on that evening. Full awareness of the information, and you need to communicate with intent. So like I said, this is ruled by Mercury in Scorpio. So the full moon is literally about highlighting what we don't always get to see. So there's sometimes, once a year, there's a full moon in every single one of our houses, in our charts, and every single zodiac sign. And we don't always get to look at this area of our lives, whatever Gemini rules for you. And there's something about information being uncovered there that you hadn't seen in a while. And it's ruled over by Mercury in Scorpio, which is a darker truth, a deeper truth. And the reason I say communicate with intent is there's going to be a lot of information being dealt out with. And Mercury in Scorpio needs to be very clear and concise about what it's communicating. So there is a level of like truth being aware, but this is why I said it's like it's on a need to know basis. This isn't Mercury in Sag where you're just like, blah, like let's just share it with the world, or Mercury in Capricorn where it's very plain. Like Mercury in Scorpio is you only tell the people that need to be told. You only, that's like the easiest way I could say it. Maybe you're told something that only you need to be told, and it's not the same for everybody else. So I'm looking forward to this full moon in Gemini because after Mercury's been retrograde in Scorpio and it was in Sag, so it's like, oh my God, what do we believe? Do we have hope? Mercury goes into Scorpio. We're like, purging out some of the darker things that we're thinking about or darker emotions that we need to purge out. And this full moon in Gemini is an opportunity to be like, okay, here's the information. Are you going to purge it? Are you going to cleanse it? Here's the truth. What do we do with this? And I don't think there's really a right or wrong answer to it, but more so of what the astrology is showing is on this day, there's a lot of information coming out and it's very specific. It's very detailed. It's going to be on a need to know basis. And it's just highlighting like what the Mercury retrograde in Scorpio was about. So what did you do during that Mercury retrograde in Scorpio? Did you, whatever you were going through, this is kind of like the time of where all of the clarity comes in of why you felt that way, what needs to be done with it, and how do we move forward. So again, I'm really looking forward to this full moon. Friday, moon goes opposite Mars in Sagittarius, and then it squares Saturn. Then the moon will square Neptune and ingress into Cancer. Coming back to why you should be on a need to know basis, because the moon going opposite Mars is going to be like arguing around the path. So when I think of Sagittarius, it's very trailblazing, and the moon in Gemini is like, well, we should do this or we should do that. And there's going to be this conflict about where you're going and who's telling you what. No backseat drivers. Like, it's one of those things of you have to be able to define your life and your path and your journey and what you want for yourself. And it is hard to have to listen. Like when you listen to other people, like what is good information? What is bad information? How much is that influencing you? And there might be this kind of challenge point of like, oh, I want to do this, but I don't know now. Like you're going to be kind of questioning a little bit. And the moon in Gemini is going to square Saturn and Pisces, where that might make you feel a little bit shut down. On Friday, the moon is going to be in between malefics. So there is this kind of like, I don't know, like I just know I need to go, but maybe I'm not as open to it as I thought. And you're going to be kind of overthinking it. And my advice is really to just let that feeling happen and not make decisions about it. Something I think a lot about is how often we feel like it's almost just automatic, where we feel as if new information comes in, we feel bad, we have to make a decision about it right now. You don't have to do that. You can literally just feel that energy and just come back to that decision. It's like, oh, I don't know what to do, or I feel overwhelmed. You know what? We're just going to put that on the shelf for a day or two, and we'll come back to that when we're feeling a little bit better. You do not have to make a life-altering decision right then and there. But as the moon goes opposite Mars, and there's this like, where am I going? Why am I doing this? The moon's going to square Saturn, where there's this level of like, maybe you overshared a little bit. Maybe that information is making you feel a little bit closed off. Again, Saturn and Pisces here, the restrictions to like letting things in. So that's going to happen. And then the moon is going to square Neptune. So as the moon squares Neptune, there's a little bit of like, okay, what are we doing now? Do I need clarity around my vision? Why do I feel this way? There's a lot of confusion and overwhelm. And I think the big question you're going to be asking yourself is, well, what now? And the answer to that is when the moon goes into Cancer, it's just rest. You don't need to make a decision right now. You're going to get some information. You're going to get some emotions. You're going to feel them, and you're not going to make a decision about it. Moon goes into Cancer, just rest. That's the best thing that you can do, especially after a full moon and the moon is now waning. Just relax a little bit. Like, and rest is so important after every, like, it's amazing to me how people can't sleep. Like, I'm one of those people that like my body refuses to not get anything less than 7 hours. Like if I get 6 hours, I don't function, and I don't wake up in the middle of the night. I have zero problem sleeping. I'm a super, super, super deep sleeper. I've slept through earthquakes, fire alarms. I've slept through my dad shaking me to wake me up. I sleep through it all. I love it. Best gift God has ever given me, to be honest with you. But rest is really important. We get to Saturday. On Saturday, now that the moon is still in Cancer, we get our next highlight, which is Mercury trining Jupiter. So now we're getting back into this watery vibe while the moon's in Cancer, Mercury's in Scorpio, Jupiter's in Cancer, and Saturn's in Pisces. But still everything's in Sagittarius. So there's a little bit more fun, but Venus in Sag, Sun in Sag, Mars in Sag, it's all coming back to Jupiter in Cancer, which is a little bit more hopeful, a little bit more gracious, a little bit more inspired, a little bit more nurtured and fulfilled. And as the moon's in Cancer, we're a little bit more sensitive to that stuff anyway. While Mercury's in Scorpio, it's direct now, right? Like we've got a specific vision, we've got a specific focus, and it's going to trine Jupiter in Cancer. There's a level of having to like trust things. So for example, like I shoot rifle, right? And when you are aiming at something, because of, let's say you've got an optic and you're really zoomed in, or a scope, and you're really zoomed in, every little tiny movement you do moves the crosshairs a lot. And you'll never get to a point where you're completely still unless you've got a lot of outside control. But you can't just sit there and wait for your hands to be still and that not move. You're always going to be kind of shaking just a little bit. And every little tiny shake just moves things in these big ways. And at some point you have to like just pull the trigger. And I look at, because again, it could be really easy to be like, well, what's this? What's that? What's this? It could be really easy to like hinder yourself. And I look at Mercury trining Jupiter as this is the planet of communication, thoughts, and logic and rationale. And Jupiter, hope, faith, belief. They're working together. And Mercury's direct, where it's like, you know what you're aiming at. Just pull the trigger. Just trust the process. Can you do that? With Mercury and Scorpio, as we're kind of still fixated on some dark stuff that we're purging out, Jupiter and Cancer is not saying, hey, this is all dark and bad. Like, that sucks. It's like, we need to heal that. Like, you need to nurture that. Whether it's a part of your childhood, whether it's whatever you're going through, it doesn't really matter. But there needs to be some level of like, letting that go to rest, if that makes sense. Being like, you know what? I'm going to put some love to that. I'm going to heal that. I'm not going to let that get to me. And this is like an opportunity to really like look at what you're looking at, what you're holding on to mentally, and just allowing space for that to get mulched up, essentially. And that brings us to, and the thing I wrote down was deeper truths, right? That's why I think this truth being revealed or on a need to know basis theme is really the vibe for this week, because Mercury trining Jupiter is like, oh, you're going to discover something. You're going to think about something, but the situation is not to rethink it or to discover a problem. It's really to like, it's Jupiter, like give some hope to it. Let that shit go. We get to Sunday. On Sunday, the moon, while it's in Cancer, is going to conjoin Jupiter. It's then going to trine Mercury. We get Mercury trining Saturn as our last highlight of the week. The moon will then also trine Saturn and sextile Uranus and trine Neptune, and then the moon goes into Leo. A lot of action going on Sunday too. Not too busy of a week, to be honest with you. But the moon conjoins Jupiter and trines Mercury, and you have to allow that truth to nourish you. This is what I've been thinking about with rest. If you haven't gotten a lot of rest in a long time, when you do finally rest, it's the best thing ever. And I look at the moon conjoining Jupiter as like, what are you taking care of? Where are you giving? Where are you giving to yourself or to other people? And where are you giving people the benefit of the doubt? Where are you giving yourself the benefit of the doubt? A lot of you guys are way too harsh on yourselves, me included. As Mercury trines Saturn, though, the thing I wrote down was allow this information to cement your spirit. And what I mean by that is like Saturn literally rules things like cement. And I've been thinking a lot about that with like Pisces. And while Saturn and Pisces, again, it's really easy to feel this darkness and this heaviness on your emotional spirit. Mercury making a trine to Saturn is kind of like, when you go through a really dark time, it's so much easier afterwards to really enjoy good things. It's like when you allow yourself to get in there, like, again, like really get in there, and you can kind of like talk to that or deal with it. It just makes it so much easier to let go, move forward. And I just look at Mercury trining Saturn as a level of being like, all right, here's what the truth is. Rather than having Saturn and Pisces like be this block, like, no, I don't want to know this Scorpio stuff because I'm too sensitive, I'm too sad. It's like, no, let that in and create some space for it and allow that to kind of cement more of your spirit. And I think what cement your spirit means is like spirit isn't always about being like foregoing and jovial in the outward expression, but more so of the like inner expression. Two vibes that I think are similar but in contrast are someone who is very ambitious and excited and driven and focused versus someone who's very calm, unchangeable, unmovable, centered. Those two have like very similar energy, but in contrast, like dark versus light. And I look at this as being calm, being centered, understanding that, taking that in. The moon, while it's still in Cancer, is going to make a trine to Saturn, sextile Uranus, and trine Neptune. A lot of connecting dots happening on Sunday. So I think Sunday is really kind of being like, okay, what was that whole Mercury retrograde about? I now know all the information. I'm now dealing with it and processing it and healing it. We'll connect some dots, and then the moon goes into Leo. And the thing I wrote down was courage comes by nightfall. So I really think by the end of the evening on Sunday, there's a level of like sick. Like I handled that. I feel nourished. I feel confident. I'm ready to go. I feel proud. Now we get this moon in Leo with the sun in Sagittarius. There's a lot more excitement. There's a lot more. It reminds me of, I really want to go to Rome. I don't know if they'll let me do this, but I really want to paint myself purple and wear purple, like a cape and everything like that. And I want to cross the Pomerium. Maybe that's just I'm fucked up and I'm sick, and only people that know about Roman history and Julius Caesar know what the fuck I'm talking about. But I'm obsessed with the Pomerium. It's one of my favorite facts about Rome. If you don't know anything about the Pomerium, look up videos about the Pomerium and like what it meant and why it existed. It's crazy. To me, it's a really fun thing. But there's something called triumphs. So in Roman history, what would happen is they would go and conquer a land, and they'd have a triumph, and you would have to be held as triumpher or something like that. Like in order to have a triumph, you would have to your soldiers would have to declare you triumphant, and you would have to like conquer a new land, and you'd have to like do something else too in order to get these triumphs. And what they was the soldiers walking through the Pomerium into the city of Rome, and they would show off everything that they had. So they would show off, they would paint, pictures of the land that they conquered. They would bring in foreign animals and have that. They would also, again, like have like the people like enslaved and chains and stuff. Yeah, they did that. But what I'm saying though is like this moon in Leo waxing, trining the sun in Sagittarius is very like, look at the land I just conquered. Like, notice me. It's very like, notice me. Look at what I just conquered. Look at the land I just took over. And I'm sure people are gonna be like, that's very colonial of you. Shut up. It's one of those energies of like, I need to, like, there's some sort of recognition of the journey that you just went through. And I think that's really important. And I think that's going to come down on Sunday night. And I think that brings us into next week, where next week has a lot of shit going on. Mars is going to square Saturn. It's just there's not much you can do. Mars square Saturn is going to suck, but you're going to have to get through it. Mercury's going to go opposite Uranus for the last time. Mercury's going to trine Neptune. Neptune goes direct after that, which is, thank God. Mercury goes back into Sagittarius. Mercury sextiles Pluto, and Mars squares Neptune. Now we're getting more into the Sagittarius vibe next week. We're out of the Scorpio gunk, and next week really kind of emphasizes more of this feeling of moving forward, being excited, getting on to new stuff before we get into 2026. So with that being said, if you guys like this video, you know what? I have been forgetting about putting the emojis. Let's do, what emoji should we put for this week? How about the tooth emoji? Do the tooth emoji. Why not? I don't know why, but we're doing the tooth emoji if you got it this far. But if you guys like this video, make sure you like it, comment below, let me know what's going on for you guys, and I'll be seeing you next week.